I was at the time working for the prosecutor's office. American Department of Justice is running projects in countries like Serbia where they're helping prosecutors and the police process financial crimes. I mean, we are coming from socialism, and then we did not have much of financial crime then in former Yugoslavia. It was more like somebody stole something. And when you get into more complicated financial schemes, as I'm sure you know, then, I mean, they get more sophisticated. And our police and our prosecutor's office were not very well equipped to deal with those types of cases. So together with Miroslava Milenovic, she was in that government body, anti-corruption body at the time, we worked on educating and ran a series of training for prosecutors and for the police that were dealing with financial crimes. And at that time, there were those 24 privatizations that the whole country was talking about, EU was talking about as a very, very important thing. And I worked on those cases on sea market, on those road maintenance companies and so on and so forth, on mostly Mišković and his colleague in Luka Beograd, Milan Beko and some others. So prior to that, I was working with Verica Barać together with Miroslav Milenovic in all of those cases, so I was pretty familiar with them. And when we started working on them in the prosecutor's office and then together with the police, there were some working groups that were formed, we started making some real progress. In basically all the 24 cases, we found direct evidence of corruption. There were young policemen that were working in those units that were really eager to get the job done, and they were really working very hard. We got all the evidence, and both Miroslav and myself helped them then make a story behind them, explain how all of that happened, give them pointers of where to look for evidence and so on and so forth. So one of those cases were the case with Mišković concerning the road maintenance companies, where he went into a privatization sort of behind the scenes. There was a front man, Milo Đurašković was his name, that appeared like the man who was doing the privatization, but basically all the money came from Mišković's company, Delta and a couple of others. And then the government set up the tender process so that only that consortium between Delta and Đurašković could win. And after that, they tried to sell that conglomerate to German company and failed because they went into the papers and saw the financial statements and saw that really it was not as strong as it was portrayed. And then they tried to get out of that deal and tried to make some money getting out of basically a ruined company. So they did some things in the process that were, I mean, a criminal offense, as we found out. I mean, we got enough evidence, found exactly what was happening. I was working on that, and I remember, I believe it was Saturday afternoon, that chief prosecutor, special prosecutor, called me to his office. There were police there, gave me lots of papers and evidence, and sort of told me, I mean, we found all of this, I mean, can we make some, let's try to make some sense out of it, we think this or that, the other. I looked at the papers, I worked until I believe it was about 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning, wrote a paper on it, described actually what happened and how the whole process went through, and described where the criminal offense was. And then tomorrow morning I got a phone call right away, and we had a meeting at, I believe it was around 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. Everybody was there, looked through the papers, looked through my report, and after that they decided to go ahead, and Mišković was arrested 7 days after. He was circling throughout the court. The judges were reading it because it's fairly simple. In all of these financial crime cases, they're not very sophisticated as people might think. They are very straightforward and simple, sometimes even dumb. I mean, if somebody really knew what they were doing, they would have made it more complicated to really bust. But I believe the situation is such that when they decide that they can't go through with the process, that they want to pull their money back, then they want to do it very quickly and then, I mean, do the stupidest things. Vučić had nothing to do with that case or any other of the 24 privatization cases in which, as I mentioned, we found everything that Verica Barać claimed. Her cases, the way she described them, all of those things that she described and she had some evidence for, when we dived in, we found everything that she was claiming. He's the only one talking. So essentially when that happens and he comes out and says that he does something, who's going to say anything other than that? It's just being then reported throughout, and that's the sort of information people then get, and then they believe, oh, finally, after almost 30 years of plundering Serbia and stealing left, right, and center without anybody really, paying any price for what they've done, finally there is a politician who decided to, put an end to that.